Lone trucker finds a virgin bride running down the road. Then he slams the brakes and runs to her. Jack was used to driving through silence, long stretches of empty road, the hum of his engine, and a life without surprises. But nothing prepared him for what he saw that day. A young bride, barefoot and breathless, running down the middle of a deserted highway, her white dress torn, her eyes full of panic. Something in him snapped. He hit the brakes and jumped out, not knowing that one decision would unravel everything. Before we dive in, if stories like this speak to your soul, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help this channel grow. We create stories that echo deep truths and forgotten voices, and your support makes it all possible. What begins as a mysterious rescue quickly spirals into a battle against a powerful family, a broken tradition, and a secret system designed to silence girls like her. But Emily is not just a runaway bride. She's a symbol of resistance. And Jack, a man trying to forget his past, becomes the unlikely guardian of her freedom. Now buckle in. What you're about to witness is a story of escape, rebellion, and one woman's fight to own her voice, no matter the cost. The sun had begun its slow descent over the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the empty desert road. Jack Miller's hands gripped the wheel of his 18-wheeler, his eyes half fixed on the fading lines of the highway ahead, half lost in thoughts he'd stopped naming years ago. The hum of the engine was his only companion, a sound he trusted more than people. He wasn't running from anything anymore, at least that's what he told himself, until he saw her. A white blur up ahead, small but frantic, running in the opposite direction of every car. His brow furrowed and his foot lifted off the gas without him realizing. As he got closer, the figure came into focus. A bride, was sprinting along the shoulder of the road, her dress ripped, her veil flapping like a flag of surrender. Jack's pulse kicked up. Her feet were bare, her face red and blotchy from crying, and she didn't look back. Once, his instincts, dulled by years of solitude, suddenly flared alive. Who runs like that in a wedding dress? And why here, in the middle of nowhere? Without thinking, he slammed the brakes so hard the truck hissed like a wounded animal and veered slightly sideways. The sound jolted her. She froze, turned toward the truck, and for a moment her whole body shook like a leaf in the wind. Jack jumped out, raising both hands in the air slowly as if approaching a wild animal. "You okay?" he called out, keeping his distance. She didn't answer. Her chest heaved with shallow breaths, her eyes darting to the empty road behind her, as if expecting someone to appear. Something about her stillness unnerved him. She looked too young to carry that much fear. Jack took one slow step forward. "I'm not going to hurt you, I just want to help." Finally she spoke, barely a whisper. "Please, and don't let them find me." Jack tilted his head, scanning the desert behind her. No cars, no people, just silence and sun. "Who's after? You?" he asked. Her lip trembled and she seemed to consider whether to run again. "My brother, my whole family. They're trying to make me marry someone I don't love." Jack raised an eyebrow. That was a lot to drop in one breath. He opened the passenger side door. "Get in, we'll figure this out later." She hesitated, but something in her, maybe exhaustion, maybe trust, pushed her forward. As she climbed in, Jack noticed how carefully she moved, as if expecting the seat to bite her. She clutched her dress at the knees and folded into the cab like someone who had never been inside a truck before. Jack settled behind the wheel, shooting a glance at her. "Name?" he asked. "Emily," she said, without looking at him. "Yours?" "Jack." He checked the mirror, still no sign of anyone. But he knew enough to trust silence only for so long. As he pulled back onto the highway, the cab felt smaller than usual, the space heavy with things unsaid. Emily stared ahead, her fingers twisting her veil until it almost tore. Jack glanced over. "Mind telling me why you're dressed like that on this road?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes began to well again. "I left during the vows. I couldn't do it. I just ran." Jack nodded slowly. "So you're a runaway bride," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Her silence confirmed it. For a guy who'd seen it all, this was a first, and it felt too big to be an accident. This wasn't a girl making a scene. This was someone escaping something. The desert stretched endlessly around them, but Jack felt like he'd crossed into another dimension. Emily's presence changed the energy of the cab. She wasn't just a stranger. She was a mystery wrapped in urgency. And deep down, something in him stirred. He remembered the last time he'd felt responsible for someone. It hadn't ended well. "You're safe now," he said quietly, unsure if he meant it. Emily turned toward him for the first time. "You don't even know what they're capable of." That line hit differently. Jack gripped the wheel tighter. As the truck roared across the asphalt, Jack's thoughts ran faster than the engine. Who were they? How far behind were they? Was he now part of something he didn't understand? But the girl next to him wasn't crying anymore. She was watching the horizon like it held both hope and danger. Jack knew one thing for sure. Whatever storm was behind her, it was headed their way, and he had just parked himself right in the middle of it. He said nothing, but his gut already knew. Turning back wasn't an option anymore. In the distance, a dust cloud rose near the highway bend. Emily's posture tensed instantly. Jack narrowed his eyes, watching it grow. Was it a random car, or someone looking for her? He eased off the gas, not wanting to draw attention. Emily spoke without turning. "If it's black, it's them." Jack didn't ask who. He didn't need to. He pushed the truck just past the speed limit, muscles taut. Whatever he thought this night would be, it had already taken a turn, and something told him the real trouble hadn't even started yet. Jack didn't speak for several miles, letting the weight of Emily's presence settle into the cab like dust. He could feel her eyes shift between the window and the rearview mirror, checking for shadows only she could name. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. Jack had seen his share of trouble in the rearview, but never in a wedding dress. Still, something in the way she curled against the door told him not to pry too soon. Instead, he flicked on the radio and let the hum of old country songs carry the space between them. Emily finally broke the silence. "I wasn't supposed to leave." Her voice was flat, almost like she was repeating a script drilled into her. "But I had to." Jack glanced over. "What made you run?" She hesitated, staring at the cracked leather of the dashboard. "He's not who they say he is." Jack didn't push further. He knew the tone. He'd heard it from vets on the road, from hitchhikers with haunted eyes. It was the voice of someone half free, half terrified of what freedom might cost. He downshifted slightly. They weren't outrunning anything yet, but it felt like they would be soon, she continued, almost whispering. "My brother arranged. It said it was tradition. Said I owed it to the family." Jack felt something harden inside him. "You don't owe anyone your life." She didn't respond, but a tear slipped down her cheek. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. He hated people like that, the ones who dress up control as love. He didn't know Emily's whole story, but he knew fear. And this was real fear, not drama. He saw it in her eyes, the kind of fear that makes you run barefoot down a highway into the arms of a stranger. They passed a gas station, empty except for a couple of flickering lights. Jack considered stopping, but Emily grabbed his arm, eyes wide. "Don't, they might have people." That sentence made his stomach drop. "What people?" he asked, but she didn't answer. Her gaze stayed locked on the dark shadows beyond. The pumps. Jack drove on, unease prickling the back of his neck. If she was paranoid, it wasn't unjustified. Something told him this wasn't her first attempt at running. And maybe this time, she wasn't just afraid of being caught. Maybe she was afraid of what might happen if she didn't escape for good. The truck's headlights cut through a long stretch of open road, and Emily slowly relaxed, just enough to rest her head against the window. Jack dared to ask, "You trust me?" She didn't move. "I don't know, but I didn't have a choice." That hit him harder than he expected. Jack had been trusted once, long ago, and he'd let someone down when it mattered. He still saw her face every time he closed his eyes. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about whether he could be the kind of man who didn't let someone fall through the cracks again. Suddenly, flashing headlights appeared behind them, approaching fast. Emily sat up straight, panic, returning in full force. "Is it them?" she asked. Jack checked his mirrors, heart thudding. It was a black SUV, no plates visible. He pressed harder on the pedal, trying not to make it obvious. "I will find out soon," he muttered. Emily looked ready to leap from the truck. "If it's my uncle, he'll follow us all night." Jack glanced at her. "Let's hope he likes diesel fumes." He signaled right and veered onto a narrow service road, trees beginning to line the path like guards. As they curved into the trees, the SUV didn't follow. It kept straight. Emily exhaled sharply, sinking into the seat. "That wasn't them," she said, more to herself than to Jack. He didn't relax. "You sure?" She nodded slowly. "I know that car. I memorized every one they might send." Jack didn't ask why. He didn't need to. This girl wasn't just escaping tradition. She was escaping a system, a machine, one that probably had roots deeper than he could imagine. But now she was here, in his truck, and her problem had just become his responsibility. They drove in. Silence again. This time not from awkwardness, but mutual understanding. Jack didn't need details to recognize what she'd been through. He'd carried his own demons, buried under highway miles and missed calls. But Emily? She was still bleeding. From hers. Jack could almost feel the moment she decided to trust him just a little more. She reached into her small purse and handed him a crumpled photo. It showed her smiling stiffly in a white dress, standing between two men. One was her brother, the other, her fiancé, had eyes as dead as stone. Jack handed it back without a word, but everything about that man's face told him one thing. She hadn't been imagining the danger. He stared ahead, grip firm on the wheel. Whatever this was, it was real. And if her family was as determined as she made them sound, this road trip had just turned into something far more dangerous. He wouldn't say it aloud, but he felt it. In his gut. This wasn't just about getting her to safety anymore. It was about stopping whatever had started when that girl ran from the altar. And it wasn't over yet. Jack pulled into a rest area surrounded by trees and silence. The truck hissed as it stopped, and he killed the engine. The stillness felt unnatural after so many miles in motion. Emily didn't speak. She just stared ahead, her eyes focused, on something only she could see. Jack reached behind the seat and pulled out a thermos. "Want coffee?" She nodded slowly, like a machine running low on charge. As he poured, her voice finally cracked through the quiet. "There's more I didn't tell you." He didn't flinch. He'd been waiting for that line. She held the cup in both hands, but didn't drink. "They've done this before. I'm not the first girl they tried to sell off." Jack turned sharply. "Sell off?" Emily nodded, eyes wet. "My cousin Rachel disappeared 3 years ago, after she refused an engagement. No one talks about her anymore." Jack let that sit in the air. The silence between them turned colder. "And you think—" he began. Emily cut in. "I know. She begged for help before they sent her away. They called it honoring tradition." Jack leaned back, the weight of the story settling like lead on his chest. He wanted to ask more, but Emily was already crumbling under the memory. "They say family comes first," she whispered. "But they mean obedience, silence, control." Her hands shook slightly, spilling coffee onto her dress. Jack reached for a napkin, gently handing it to her. "You're not going back," he said. Not a question. A promise. Emily looked up, searching his face for any hint of doubt. She found none. But deep inside, Jack knew this was more than a runaway ride. This was a declaration of war against a system that wouldn't let her go. Quietly. A low rumble echoed in the distance, thunder or maybe an engine. Emily tensed. Jack stood, scanned the road, then calmly locked the truck doors. "We'll stay here for a bit, let them think we vanished." Emily nodded, folding herself smaller on the seat. Jack sat beside her in silence. She finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" He answered without thinking. "Because I've failed someone before and I'm not doing it again." She didn't ask who. She just said thank you, in a tone so fragile it nearly shattered the cab's air. As night fully fell, Emily shifted, pulling a folded paper from her purse. "I found this in my brother's drawer." She handed it to Jack. It was a contract. Her name, the fiancé's, a dowry, even a transfer of assets. Jack blinked in disbelief. They signed you off like a business deal. Emily stared at the paper. To them, that's all I ever was. A guarantee, a symbol of alliance. Jack's jaw clenched. He folded the contract and shoved it in his pocket. Not anymore. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her smile belonged to someone still watching over their shoulder. Suddenly, headlights flickered across the parking lot entrance. Jack turned off the interior lights and ducked. Emily held her breath. The vehicle passed slowly, pausing for a second. A chill ran through both of them. Then it drove off. Jack exhaled. Too close, he muttered. Emily whispered, that was his car. He found us. Jack's pulse thundered in his ears. They couldn't stay here. He turned the key. Engine. Roared back to life. The chase wasn't over, not yet. But now they knew just how far the enemy was willing to go. And that changed everything. As they sped off into the darkness, Emily sat upright, more alert than ever. There's one place they won't look, she said. Jack glanced over. Where? My grandfather's cabin. He hated the family's ways, left everything and vanished. I found the address once in a letter. Jack nodded. You sure it's safe? No, she replied, but it's our best shot. Jack grinned faintly. Then let's disappear. For the first time since they met, Emily didn't flinch at the sound of wheels spinning fast. She looked forward with eyes that no longer only held fear. Now there was fire. The road narrowed, trees closing in like sentinels. But Jack felt strangely clear-headed. The stakes had changed. This wasn't just escape, it was rebellion. And Emily, the trembling bride he picked up on a dusty highway, had just become the boldest passenger he'd ever met. You okay? He asked, voice low. No, she answered. But I'm ready. Jack shifted gears, pressing harder on the pedal. Behind them was everything she'd been told to accept. Ahead was something neither of them could name, but at least it was theirs to choose. And that kind of freedom? It doesn't come easy. It's earned. The gravel crackled beneath the truck's tires as Jack turned off the main road onto a narrow dirt path. Emily clutched the seatbelt, her breath sharp and shallow. The air outside had thickened, less from humidity and more from tension. They were close to the cabin now. Emily pointed toward a turn hidden by overgrown trees. There, she whispered. Jack nodded, maneuvering carefully. The sun had long set, but the moon cast enough light to reveal a wooden structure in the clearing, a small quiet house swallowed by wilderness. For a moment, it felt like safety. Until Jack noticed the second set of tire tracks. He stepped out, cautiously, flashlight in hand. The cabin looked undisturbed, but he knew better than to trust appearances. Emily followed, her eyes scanning every corner. I remember this place, she said softly. He used to bring me here when I was little, said it was a place where no one could tell him who to be. Jack didn't answer. His gut was already screaming. Something was off. He tested the cabin. Door unlocked. Inside, the furniture was coated in dust except for the floor, where fresh prints had disturbed the grime. Someone had been here recently, and they weren't alone. A sudden creak came from the back room. Jack motioned for Emily to stay behind him. He stepped forward quietly, his boots barely brushing the floor. He pushed open the door with a slow, deliberate motion and froze. A man stood inside, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a sleek black suit now smudged with dirt. His eyes were cold and calculating. Emily, he said calmly, this has gone far enough. Emily gasped. Thomas. Jack stepped between them, fists instinctively clenched. She's not going anywhere with you. Thomas chuckled. You really think you can protect her from her own family? Jack didn't flinch. If that's what she needs, yes. Thomas's smirk faded. This isn't your fight, trucker. You've been dragged into something far bigger than you. Understand. Jack didn't move. Try me. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. You said you'd never be like them. You promised. Thomas turned to her, expression softening just slightly. I am trying to protect you. You don't know what you're risking. I know exactly what I'm risking, she snapped. My life, my voice, My right to choose. The room pulsed with silence. Emily, once trembling in fear, now stood like stone. Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out a document. Sign this and we can all walk away. No more running, no more danger. Emily looked at the paper. It was a transfer of guardianship, back to her family. If I sign this, I disappear forever. Jack stepped closer. Don't. Thomas locked eyes with him. If she doesn't, we'll go to the police. Tell them you abducted her. You'll lose everything. Jack's jaw clenched. Let them come. Emily shook her head. I'm done playing by your rules. She tore the paper in half slowly, never breaking eye contact with her brother. Thomas's face twisted, not in rage but in realization. You're serious. Dead serious, Emily said. And if you try to stop me, I'll show everyone what you've done. She pulled out her phone, revealing recordings, conversations, contracts, threats. Jack looked over, stunned. She'd been documenting everything. Thomas stepped back, suddenly aware that his grip on her had slipped. Shall you think anyone will believe you? He asked. They will, Jack said, stepping beside her, because this time she's not alone. That line echoed through the cabin like thunder. Thomas didn't respond. He simply straightened his suit and walked toward the door. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Emily's voice didn't waver. Maybe, but at least it'll be my decision. He disappeared into the night. Jack locked the door behind him, unsure whether to feel relieved or more afraid. Emily collapsed into a chair, trembling again, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was adrenaline, release. The burden was shifting. For the first time she had stood her ground, and Jack had witnessed it. Not as a savior, but as a witness to her strength. Outside, the wind picked up. Jack walked the perimeter to ensure Thomas had really gone. He saw no sign of him, no headlights, no engine in the distance, just dark trees and scattered leaves. But inside, something had changed. Emily wasn't just a runaway bride anymore. She was a resistor, a disruptor of tradition. Jack returned to the cabin and found her staring at the broken contract on the floor. Still ready to run? He asked. She shook her head. No, I'm ready to fight. Jack nodded, heart beating harder than it had in years. He wasn't sure what came next, but they'd face it together. Morning light filtered through the cracks in the cabin walls, painting slivers of gold across the dusty floor. Jack had barely slept. He paced quietly near the window, watching for movement down the road. Emily lay curled on the couch, the remnants of fear still etched in her posture, though her face showed something new, resolve. Jack's mind spun with possibilities. Thomas might be gone, but men like him didn't quit easily. Jack had seen that type before, driven by control, not reason. He poured 2 cups of coffee and set one on the table near Emily. She sat up slowly, the scent waking her faster than words could. He won't give up, she said. Jack nodded. Then we make the next move. Emily looked surprised. You mean run? No, Jack said firmly. You said you're ready to fight. So let's make them come into the light. Emily blinked, uncertain. Jack explained his idea, exposing the family publicly, using the evidence she'd gathered. She hesitated. If I go on record, I become a target. But if I don't, someone else ends up like Rachel. Her voice cracked at the name. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let's make sure Rachel didn't vanish for nothing. By afternoon, they were back on the road. Not running, but heading toward the town's local courthouse. Emily had decided she would file a restraining order and submit the evidence she had. Jack parked a few blocks away to avoid suspicion. As they walked, Emily held her head high, though her hands trembled. You don't have to come in, she said. Not a chance, Jack replied. Inside the courthouse, she handed over her files, signed statements and dates. The clerk watched with wide eyes as Emily detailed the threats and financial documents. No one said it aloud, but something big had just been set in motion. As they stepped outside, a black car screeched around the corner. Jack instantly pulled Emily behind him. The passenger door flew open and a man emerged, tall, older, dressed in ceremonial wedding garb. Father, Emily muttered, voice hollow. The man's eyes burned. Get in the car. Now. Jack stood. Firm? She's not going anywhere. The father sneered. You think I'll let our name be dragged through the mud by a disobedient girl and a trucker? Emily stepped forward. No. You're not angry because I left. You're angry because I exposed you. The words hit him like a slap, but he didn't move. People on the street began to stare. Emily's father noticed. His jaw tightened. You want to make a scene? He growled. Fine. He pulled a folded sheet from his coat, a printed wedding. Vow unsigned. You will finish what you started. We already told the press everyone is waiting. Emily stared at the paper, then at Jack. Is this what I was worth to you, a headline? The father didn't answer. He only stepped closer, voice low. If you turn away now, you destroy everything this family built. Emily's hands shook, but she didn't back down. Then maybe it deserves to fall. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. This has recordings, documents, proof of everything. She held it up, letting bystanders see. If anything happens to me or him, she pointed at Jack, this goes viral. The crowd murmured. The father froze. He hadn't expected her to be this bold, this prepared. Don't do this, he whispered, almost pleading. But the power had shifted. Emily took a step closer. You used to say a vow is sacred. Well, I'm making a new one. I vow to never let your control break another girl's life. Jack placed his hand gently on her back. Let's go. She nodded. Together they walked away, leaving the father speechless on the courthouse steps. The moment crystallized, like something eternal, a vow shattered, a new one born. Emily didn't cry. She didn't flinch. With every step, she shed the version of herself they had created. Behind them, the courthouse door closed. Ahead, a different life waited. For Jack, this wasn't just her fight anymore. It had become a reckoning for both of them. The girl in the white dress wasn't running anymore. She was walking towards something no one could take from her. Inside the truck again, the atmosphere had shifted completely. Emily leaned back in the seat, eyes closed, but there was no exhaustion, only peace. Jack watched her for a long moment. What now? He asked. She opened her eyes slowly. Now we choose where we go. For the first time I get to choose. He smiled, a rare expression from a man who had spent years drifting. Then tell me where. She shrugged. Somewhere with quiet roads and honest people. Jack started the engine. I know just the place. As the truck rolled forward, something invisible snapped free behind them. The vow had been shattered, but not her spirit. The highway stretched out before them like a ribbon of second chances. Jack drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the open window, letting the wind cool the weight still lingering in the air. Emily sat beside him with her bare feet on the dashboard, her veil now folded in her lap, like a symbol of a life she'd escaped. She hadn't said much since they left the courthouse. She didn't need to. Some silences didn't scream. They healed. Jack glanced at her, then back to the road. He didn't know where they were headed. But for once, that didn't matter. They stopped at a diner off a back road, a quiet place with cracked leather booths and pie that looked homemade. Emily took her time with each bite, her eyes scanning the people inside. No one looked threatening. No one looked like they knew her name. Jack ordered black coffee, watching her from across the table. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Still getting used to the idea that I'm not running anymore. Jack understood more than she knew. Freedom wasn't about distance. It was about no longer looking over your shoulder. Takes time, he said, but it sticks. Outside, they stood in the parking lot under a sky full of broken clouds. Emily held her veil in her hand, fingers tightening. I don't want to carry this anymore, she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. Then don't. She looked at the trash bin, then back at the veil. But instead of tossing it, she walked to the truck and tucked it behind the seat. Not as a reminder of pain, she said, but of what I overcame. Jack smiled faintly. That veil, once a symbol of chains, had become her war trophy, proof that she'd chosen herself. As they drove again, Emily talked more freely. About Rachel, about how she used to dream of leaving but never thought she could. I thought if I said no, they'd erase me like they erased her. Jack didn't interrupt. He knew the value of letting someone speak at their own pace. But now, she continued, I feel like I have her with me. Every step forward, it's both of us walking. That hit Jack deeper than he expected. He thought of his daughter, the one he'd lost. He never got to protect her, but maybe this was redemption in motion. They passed a river, the sun now low and golden again. Emily rolled down the window and let her hair fly wild in the wind. She looked young, not broken, not scared, just young and finally alive. Where to next? She asked. Jack thought for a second. I've got a place up north, quiet town, nobody asks questions. Emily nodded. Sounds perfect, and it did. Not because it was hidden, but because it was honest. Jack had drifted for so long he forgot what grounding felt like, but Emily's presence, her courage, reminded him there were still things worth anchoring to. At a fuel stop, Emily walked alone to the counter, bought a map and marked a route. Jack noticed how steady her hands were now. The girl who had climbed into his truck was gone. In her place was a woman carving her own road. You ever think about going back? She asked later. Jack stared at the road. No use looking back, not unless you plan to change it. And some things, he paused, some things are meant to be left behind. She didn't push, just nodded, and that was enough. They understood each other without filling the silence. Nightfall, they parked near a ridge overlooking a valley full of lights. Emily stepped out, wrapping herself in a blanket Jack kept behind the seat. They sat on the hood of the truck, watching the world blink below. I used to think life was something that happened to me, she said. Now I realize I get to shape it. Jack didn't answer with words. He just handed her the last piece of apple pie from the diner. They ate in peace, two souls who had escaped cages different in form but equal in weight. The stars above felt earned. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out the ring she had worn at the altar. I think I'm ready, she whispered. Jack watched as she stood at the edge of the cliff and threw it into the dark. Not as revenge, not as bitterness, but as closure. She turned back toward him, lighter, freer. Now it's done, she said. And it was. That moment didn't need fanfare. It needed nothing more than truth. Jack opened the truck door and gestured for her to get in. No words, just movement, just the road. And for the first time, it belonged to them both. As the truck disappeared into the night, the camera would linger on the empty road behind them. No more pursuers, no more expectations, just quiet hums of wheels spinning toward peace. Emily rested her head against the window, watching the world slip by. Jack turned. On the radio, letting a soft song fill the cab. Think we'll ever tell this story to someone? She asked. Jack smiled. Maybe. Or maybe it's just ours. The road ahead glowed under moonlight, uncertain, winding, full of possibility, and that was enough. For once, the destination didn't matter, only the fact that they were free. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful journeys like this one. Become a channel member to help us bring even more stories of courage, justice, and hope to life.